Hello and welcome to the Education on Fire podcast. The place where we share creative and inspiring learning in our schools. Season 4, Episode 52. Hello and welcome back to the Education on Fire podcast with me, Mark Taylor. Today I'm joined by David Chernaik from the Apollo Music Projects. And the Apollo Music Projects bring live classical music to children who might not otherwise have experienced it. Over 11 years, more than 6,600 children have experienced the magic of live performance from the classroom all the way through to the concert hall, and culminating in a thrilling spectacle of a full orchestra and concert, which is absolutely exactly what the thing I love the most about and what I'm trying to do more and more of. So welcome, David, and thanks for chatting with us. So first of all, can you give us a little bit of a background about yourself and how the project came into fruition?
Yes, I can. Actually, just to add to something you already said, it's now 13 years and over 8,600 children. So
wow.
The numbers just keep going up. And before that, I actually started with a pilot program in 1999 that the Arts Council funded as part of a new audiences program. And we tested it out in a few schools. Then it took 5 more years to get enough funding to do it properly. But the first idea for it was really when I moved to Hackney, which was a lovely area to live in. It wasn't as gentrified as it is now. And, my neighbours all had kids in the local school, seemed like a very nice school. My kids are actually there now. And they didn't have the music that we had when we were at school, because I came to England when I was 10, and all the way through, especially through secondary school. I was at a state secondary school in London. We had wonderful music. We had free music lessons. We had free Saturday music. We had free London School Symphony Orchestra. It was just wonderful. And I realized that now kids don't have free music lessons on the whole. They have first access lessons sometimes, but there isn't the pyramid structure that there was before. And music education in schools is always under threat, especially with focus on literacy and numeracy. So my idea was to try and see if I could find a way to give the kids in the local schools some music. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be nice to walk to work and I can go to the school and I can play music? And then I extended that further. And I read a wonderful book by about an American program. And they had actually it was a wind quintet who was a resident in a school, worked with the teachers, worked on any subject, bringing music into it. And they had the most extraordinary results. And they described some of their methods, which I sort of thought I could try here. So it was really testing out the idea. And we started in 4 schools, and then now we're up to 22. So, it's very exciting, really.
And so where did your passion of music come from? Was it purely from your experience that you had going through the school system? And like I said, with everything in place, I can really relate to that. That's how I became a professional musician, was sort of seeing how you could develop and getting that first-hand experience all the way through.
Yes, I think it's what it's done, working in music in this way, is to make me think about what it means to be a musician, and why do we care so much about music? Why do we want our kids to have the chance to play music and other children? And I think it's partly, as a musician yourself, you have that passion. And then sometimes when you're becoming a professional musician and trying to find your place and something that you enjoy doing, it's not always enjoyable. It's not always easy. And I think it's sort of trying to get to the essence of what is it about music that really makes it so special and so inspiring. And one of the things I thought about was that so much of music is in this sort of framework of playing the music that it's sort of played in such a way that only people who know about that music already can really understand it. Sitting quietly in the concert hall, reading the program notes, all that side of it, which I love personally, but it's not for everyone. A lot of people I knew, a lot of adults, very afraid of music. They say, I don't mind listening to it in the background, but I wouldn't go to a concert. I wouldn't know what to do. I wouldn't know when to clap. I wouldn't know anything about it. I'd feel ignorant. So I think there's so many things for me that fed into that. One of the things was living for a year in New York, where I was studying cello at the Juilliard School, living with my uncle, who is a doctor, and he has this wonderful ability to ask what we call a stupid question. Say, okay, well, why are there four people in a string quartet? What does the conductor actually do? You know, how many instruments? He wouldn't say how many instruments are in a string quartet. I think he could probably work that one out. But you know what I mean? It's the sort of questions that you're embarrassed to ask because you think the music is something that you're supposed to be educated to understand. So that was great, and I could ask him any question about medicine and without feeling stupid. And so that was an interesting point. And then it was when I was on tour with the Guildhall Strings, which I played in for several happy years, and we toured all over the world. And if we were playing in a village in Greece or somewhere in a small town in India to people who clearly had never heard classical music before, they would be at their quietest and at their most attentive at exactly the same point in the music where an audience in Wigmore Hall would be. So you think, you know, those special moments in a piece of music where it's at its quietest or it's the peak of the tension before it resolves and so on. How can they get that when they have no education in music at all? They've never even seen a violin. And you think, okay, well, that proves that it is inherent in the music. These feelings, these emotions, the structure, all of the things that composers put into the music, they're all incredibly basic. And that means anyone can understand them. So my job then is to see, okay, how do we identify those points and how do we relate them to children's own experiences and understanding? And so what you do is you have to pick the music that works. It can't be too sort of complicated, and some music is written for people to look at and say, well, isn't that clever? And, you know, I didn't understand that till I heard it 8 times and so on. We can't do that. There's no time for that. But what you find is that if you pick the music which you love the most and which you understand and are inspired by the composers you really care about, then you can communicate that to children. You find the points, you help them see what's going on, and it really gets through very, very quickly.
I really like the fact that and that's the reason I do what I do, especially as a musician, is the fact that there's the essence there that you can't necessarily communicate in words, and music brings that out, and it makes people and children especially identify with something bigger than what they can see on the surface of life. And I think understanding that there's more to everything going on here is a really good just to kind of, like you say, take away some of those layers of life is about learning maths and English, you know, and while those things are incredibly important, just knowing that it's about how you feel, about connecting with something in a way which is different than just an academic idea. I think that just opening that door and giving them that experience is just absolutely invaluable.
Yes, I love the way you've put that, and that's absolutely right. There's so many different angles to this that really make it work. I mean, one of them is in the music itself. It's the children's response to the music that is the most important. So it's, like you say, it's an emotional thing. It's opening their minds to the idea there's something beyond what you can explain. And children love that. They do it with reading, they do it with film, they do it with, you know, why do children love Harry Potter? It's not real. It's not the real world. In the real world, you can't walk through a brick wall. But why can't you? You know, it's the same thing. There are things that you can't, you know, you feel this feeling while you're hearing the music, and you see people concentrating, playing it in this incredibly, I don't know, a sort of, it's not serious, but it's concentrated. That's one of the things you have to get across. It's focus, it's intensity. And they see people playing with this intensity, and they just think, hang on a minute, what's going on? And they become part of that, and you're sort of communicating that. And it helps children who maybe struggle with numbers, struggle with writing, but actually when they hear music, they suddenly can tell a story. We've had that several times. Kids who the teachers actually said, well, now I know how to help him write a story because he has not been able to do it all year. And then we play him a piece of music and say, well, what do you see or what do you imagine when you hear that? And this boy tells a whole story, And the teacher said, right, thanks, I know what to do now.
Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. And that's the thing about giving children experiences, isn't it? Because as educators and as adults, we don't know what it is that's going to light their fire or get them to connect in a way with themselves that they can express themselves. And so having these opportunities, which is exactly what you're doing, going in to give the opportunities to these children, is just something that, well, I personally think every child should have the opportunity to do. But we know with current funding and the way the system is in place, like you said, with the first access now, it's sort of the initial stage, that not every child does get that. So so I think it's such a fantastic thing that you actually do. Can you take us through a little bit about how the project works? Do you go into the children's classrooms only, or is there a progression between that initial contact all the way through, as I said at the beginning, to a concert hall? How does the whole thing sort of fit together?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things I think that makes what we do unusual. I haven't come across anyone else anywhere who does things the same way we do. And that most music projects will do one or the other. Either an orchestra will put on a concert for kids, go to schools and introduce it probably, but then it's a concert experience. And other music projects take place in schools. We do both. So the idea is that we go into each classroom, work with the whole class, so everyone is involved, whatever their, whether they know anything about music, whether they're behavioral issues, whatever. Everyone is part of it, and we work with each class 6 times. So they will hear string quartet. That's the basic group which I run. They will also have a wind quartet and a brass quartet. And in each case, we're introducing the instruments, we're taking apart the music, we're sort of playing different styles of music to them. And one of the key things we do is to play parts separately. So you'll have a passage of music. You're looking at the sort of drama in the music, or the conversational way the composer uses the instruments, or textures. But then you actually take a passage, you stop and you play one part at a time and ask the kids very focused questions. Who played first? What can you hear? Why did the composer do that? Why did Beethoven have us all play and then stop? What happens when it stops? It's not, someone will say because you're tired. And actually, we've only just played about half of music. So it's very nice of them. But someone will always say, because you don't know what's going to happen next. So therefore, it's dramatic.
Yes.
And immediately you say, Beethoven's setting that out right from the beginning, that it's dramatic. Now, you can analyze that. Charles Rosen was very good at that, saying that everything in a classical sonata form movement is in the first phrase. The first phrase will tell you what can be done with the rest of it, and so on. We don't have to go into that sort of detail. We just say, well, why did he do that? And he said, well, the kids will say, because it's dramatic, therefore the rest of the piece they will listen to with that in mind. So then we do that the 6 times. And in the middle of that program, which takes place over a couple of terms, the kids will all come out, say 3 or 4 schools at a time, to a chamber orchestra workshop. So around 200 kids. We've managed to find some wonderful venues which are close to the schools, which are often old town halls that are no longer used as town halls, but they become art centers or multi-use buildings. Some of these absolutely beautiful halls, and the kids walk past them and don't know they're there. So there's that element as well of sort of entitlement that
Sure,
they're allowed to hear this music. They're allowed in these buildings. They're allowed to get up close to expensive instruments and not touch them, and but listen to them, and so then they're getting the sort of concert experience, but it's still intimate because they know the players. At the end of the session, they go up and talk to different people, and some people even let them try their instruments and so on. And they're also listening to longer and longer pieces of music. So then we go back to the classroom, and after the chamber orchestra workshop, the next session we do, the listening is so intense. It's incredible. It's absolutely this sort of pin drop silence. I think because they kind of get the point of it. Once they see all the instruments playing together, it's like, wow, that really makes sense. And they can hear everything because we've kind of taught them how to do that, hear the separate parts and follow the story in the music. So it's a sort of friendly experience. And then at the end, all of the schools come to a concert at Hackney Empire with a full symphony orchestra. And again, they're drawn into that. They can follow the instruments. It's not a foreign experience, and it really works.
And what I love about that is the fact that it's a real great combination of learning, experience, and bringing the whole together, rather than just, like you say, here's a one-off concert, wasn't that really nice, we really enjoyed the music, but it comes and goes really quickly. Having that ongoing learning, that ongoing experience of being up close and personal with an instrument, and also a musician as well for that matter, to then being able to see how all that flows through to then, there is nothing quite like sitting in a concert hall with a symphony orchestra playing something, but actually, like you say, having that direct understanding of, but I've seen that person, or I've seen that instrument, I understand where the music's going. And I think as a whole project, it's such a fantastic way of doing it. In terms of the musicians themselves and the symphony orchestra at the end, are they people that, is it your symphony orchestra? Is it people that you book, or do you work in tandem with somebody else?
Well, yes, up to this point, it is my orchestra, the Apollo Chamber Orchestra, and people who have sort of joined from being in the program. And obviously, if in the future we expand and we're working in different parts of the countries, we would, be delighted to work with other musicians as well, and sort of train them in what we do and our methods, and how we can really capture the attention of the kids just the way you described. That's sort of the key point of it, is that the personal thing. So you're taking an experience which is of sitting in a concert. Of course, there's a wow factor of being in this amazing space. But if the kids don't know the people, haven't met the people, haven't seen the instruments up close, and haven't learned how to sort of follow the music, they'll just look around at all the chandeliers and just keep not focusing on the music. So it is that personal thing. And I think it's what we've found is that almost by osmosis, by sort of playing in the sessions, the musicians come to think about music in a slightly different way, and to perform in a different way, to notice different things. So we're actually noticing what the kids are noticing. So when I hear a piece of music or play one myself, I'm always thinking about the kind of things we're getting across to kids, and that affects how we communicate. Some of the things that you don't realize you're doing, like making a very serious face. Okay, you don't have to grin. In fact, it's better if you don't, but you do have to sort of allow your facial expressions to relax a bit, and not be so serious in your expression, because that can put people off. So if the music is beautiful, you're allowed to just sort of relax your face and have a little tiny smile and so on, and look at each other a bit more, communicate. We can do anything without looking as musicians, but sometimes it's nice to just sort of make eye contact, let the kids see that you're making eye contact, because otherwise they don't really know how you do it.
Absolutely. And what I love about that from a professional musician's point of view is the fact that as a profession, we're very much, while it's very collaborative because we're playing with lots of people, it's very individually focused as well. It's about, what am I doing with me? How is this affecting me? What am I doing here? And it's only when you can do exactly what you just said and think, but I'm not just doing it for myself, I'm doing it with other people, but I'm also doing it for my audience. And then all of a sudden, when that becomes your sort of focus and your sort of understanding, your sort of your ability to let go and actually play, I think, actually really improves as well.
Yes, that's absolutely right. And it's there was something, I went to open rehearsal Gustavo Dudamel did at the Barbican, and he said something which I thought was absolutely brilliant. He said that when we rehearse, he was saying this to the audience, we rehearse, it's basically a conversation between the music and us, the musicians and the music, and we're expressing the composer's intentions, we're communicating with each other and so on. But then you come, then the audience comes, and then there's a triangle. And without that, the music doesn't exist. And I thought that was absolutely brilliant. The audience, so sometimes I tell the kids when, we're trying to get across this idea of listening as being an active thing. So it's your mind is active, obviously, but also you have a role to play. It's not, the music is not being played at you, it's being played for you. and you are a part of that. And what you do as an audience, this whole idea of being quiet, you want kids to be quiet, not because you said be quiet, but because they want to hear what comes next. And the better they listen, the more they're able to hear that. But also that their job is to create the silence that the music can grow out of, because without silence, there can't be music. And that is their job. And they love that. They absolutely love helping us to play music and helping us to hear each other.
Yeah, that's really insightful understanding, isn't it? And I can really see how, like you say, from something which people then perceive to be passive, as in I'm just here watching you do what you do, to actually be an integral part. I love the triangle idea of the three-way, everyone being as important as each other, really, in order to get the full experience, whether you're the musician or in the audience. I think that's a brilliant way of putting it. I'm really glad you shared that with us. That's fantastic. How does the project work in terms of being able to be funded? I mean, it's obviously not something which every borough or every part of the country has access to. So how far is your reach at the moment, and how is that funded? And do you have any plans to expand it further afield?
Well, at the moment, we're in 5 London boroughs. We started in Hackney. We're also now in Haringey, Islington, Camden. We've also been in Waltham Forest, and Tower Hamlets we're in as well. And one of the key things about it, the aim is to focus on areas of disadvantage. So areas where possibly lower income areas, obviously that changes all the time, but it's where children don't have access to classical music. So that it's a sort of broad thing. But the important thing is that partly because we think this is the way it should be, but also because of the realities of school budgets and so on, it's very heavily subsidized. So each school will pay a fee, which equates to about a fifth of the total cost to us of delivering the program. So obviously you've got the organization's administration, but you have musicians, and musicians are all paid properly. And, a symphony orchestra is an expensive thing. So it's up to us then to raise the rest of the money. And that comes from trusts and foundations, the Arts Council, individuals, and we're hoping to develop some corporate links to have companies supporting us. And so that's a constant process. It's very hard, but we've managed to do it so far and to grow every year. The next step, really, I mean, ideally, in an ideal world, the Department for Education would see this and see how it benefits children and music in general. They would say, this is such an important thing, we're going to put some money in, and this is going to be in every school in the country in one way or other. I don't see that happening. So what we need to do is to really to show funders that what we're doing is of such benefit that they should really get behind it, and many of them do. In terms of expanding, that's what we're looking at the moment. And the question then is, how far can we reach while keeping the essence of the program and keeping it as an Apollo program rather than just something that people can do in any number of different ways wherever they happen to be. So it's sort of working out how we do that, how we fund it, how we train people, how we, establishing to what extent different areas of the country might actually want to have this program. So we're looking into all of that at the moment.
So if there are schools out there that are listening to this and thinking, that just sounds like the exact thing I need to give my children, it's the best thing for them to do to contact you through your website, and can you give us those contact details there? And I should also say it'll be on the Education on Fire show notes as well, but just so they've got an idea of where to go and what the process would be for them actually to be able to take part.
Yes, absolutely. If they contact us, it's www.apollomusicprojects.org, and the email address is info@apollomusicprojects.org. And the way it would have to work is we can't go to a single school in a new area, because obviously you then have to, if you're going to have the chamber orchestra workshops, you have to have a group of 3 or 4 schools that can all go to the same venue.
Sure.
Similarly with the symphony orchestra concerts, that's a difficult sentence. You we need to have, say, around 8 schools. So maybe it's sort of working on the idea of clusters. And that could be, if there is an individual school who is interested, that could be them looking and saying, well, okay, what group of schools do we have that we work with? Or should we put you in touch with the music hub, who actually run all the music and know which school is which, and know who's expressed an interest, who has a need? Or it might be the local education authority. And then beyond that, it's a question of funding and logistics. Is there a company in that area who would back this? Is there a funder based in that area who would support it? And then the next stage for us, and this may be a year or two down the line, would be to see how we work, how we find the musicians, whether they travel from our base or whether we work with local musicians. What music is like. Professional musicians travel all over the place, but we also want to extend this idea that I have benefited from, of being able to walk to work occasionally.
That does make a big difference, doesn't it, when you are sort of that close, and also it starts to bring communities together, and especially if you've got local musicians working with local schools, that has a nice feel about it. And I think also that the connection side of it as well, because you understand the same landscape and the same area, and I think there's that kind of essence of, well, that could be me. If it happens to be that a child thinks, I really enjoyed this, I'd really like to see whether I could have a go, or where it might lead. I think having that initial connection is really important. So that, I think that's a really, really important takeaway there. So on your website, you have a members area, and I know you have some trustees and things. And how do you go about well, I guess first of all, sort of getting people on board to be a trustee or to sort of help you in that regard, and what's the members area? Is that people that take part, or is that people that are supporting you in another way?
Well, the members area on the website is just so that there's a teacher section and a musician section. So that's informations on the schedules and the travel and the school addresses and resources for teachers. So that's the sort of, nobody else really needs to look at that. But in terms of trustees and friends, we have a friends organization, which is Armando Iannucci is our president of the Friends. He's a great supporter and our patron, along with Simon Rattle. And so people can join us as friends, and that's a really wonderful way of supporting us and coming to see what we do and supporting our work. And then in terms of trustees, it's just a really interesting thing. I mean, I didn't start out thinking I would work in the voluntary sector, and I have been for all these years, and I know an awful lot about it. And I think the voluntary sector is a wonderful sector. People really support each other, really work together. There's so many organizations out there to help us. And that includes helping to find trustees, helping to put people who want to be trustees together with charities who are looking for trustees. So it's sort of networks, really. And just recently, in the last year, we've had 4 new trustees. We had, I think we had 2 left, and then, increased the number. So it's just sort of finding the people who are interested and seeing what skills they have that they can bring to us. And I find it very exciting. It's challenging. You need to get the right balance. You need to get the right people. And I think there's so many different ways you can do it. There are charities who have a board that really just rubber stamps things and doesn't get too involved. And there are others where the trustees are incredibly involved. And it's just sort of, as the organization grows and the staff and executive becomes bigger and stronger, you have to have a clarity of roles, but you also need support. And the trustees are there to support and to guide and to make sure the charity carries out its charitable aims and manages its budgets and so on. So, very interesting.
And it's a really important foundation, isn't it? Especially, as you were saying, in terms of expansion and wanting to move further out of London, or whether you can expand sort of really into the whole country. You need that foundation and understanding and support in order to make sure, like you say, that it goes in the direction that you want to, and it's essentially your project that is being able to be expanded rather than just doing it for the sake of it. And I think that's a really important point, that actually when you've got the foundations in place, then everything else is possible. It's always very difficult, especially in this industry, in terms of getting the funding you need, because these things are expensive. But if you're doing it in the right way, and it's as exciting and as important as your project is, I just think it's a brilliant thing, and I really hope that there's someone listening who may be connected to a company or an organisation that has access to funds that can really help you and support you to make it grow and have the vision that you want it to do and affect as many children as possible.
Well, that would be absolutely fantastic. And that is what it's about. It's about, and one of our trustees was, they were having the conversation recently, well, do we want it to grow? We're doing really well. We've got 1,200 kids a year. Everyone thinks it's great. It's really wonderful. Why don't we just keep doing that? And the answer was, well, I didn't join the organization to just do the same thing. If it's that good, which we think it is, then every child should have the chance to benefit. And, I can't, I'm not sort of saying I think that our project should be in every school in the country. That's not something we would even want, but that every school should have music. Every school should have music programs, and this should be one of the options or similar programs. And in terms of our own reach, I think it's partly one of the things I'm very excited about with the next phase. I've always led the workshops myself, and a lot of my colleagues are now saying, well, I'd like to do that, and I think I could do it really well. And so we're going to be training our existing musicians, growing our workforce of workshop leaders. And then, for each person who currently works with me, who is then able to do schools, they could do 4 schools or 8 schools themselves. And that would then bring in other musicians. So it's also about, if you think of music graduates now, and there's so much pressure on them and to find a career and to find places to play and so on. And I think they need help as well. And they need guidance. They need new opportunities. And also this way of thinking about music. It's gets you away from the pressure of having to play every note perfectly and doing competitions and so on, because it's focusing again on the essence of music and on communication. And I think a lot of musicians would be very happy to be a part of that.
I think that's a great place to finish, because I think that is indeed the essence of everything, and I think music is the perfect thing for that, and to support children in that kind of way. So, David, thank you so much for chatting to me, and I'm really excited about the project, and I'd like to find out more, and I'd certainly like to come and actually see some of this in action, if you don't mind me coming to have a look. And I wish you well for the future, and I hope it expands and grows in a way that enables you to touch as many children as possible.
Thanks so much, Mark. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I will definitely make sure you can come and see one of our sessions.
Thanks for listening to the Education on Fire podcast. For more information of each episode and to get in touch, go to educationonfire.com. Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.